Hi, Dr. P here, and I'm going to try to differentiate between social deduction games and other game types. Social deduction is a relatively new kind of game, and I have to admit up front, it's not a kind of game that I care to play. I have watched them quite a bit to try to understand them, and read some rules. Now, social deduction games include Mafia, which is the original, which was created by a Russian professor to help his students understand some things. Werewolf, which is much like Mafia. Resistance, Secret Hitler, which are rather more sophisticated, and others. They all revolve around uncertainty of role. Are you a villager or are you a werewolf, for example? Practically speaking, these are party games. They're actually forms of guessing game with a little bit of deduction. Some wag went further and said werewolf isn't a game, it's an argument. But it is a way to employ yomi, that is, to more or less try to read other players' minds to know which role they're actually fulfilling. And it's an argument that many people, especially under 30s, enjoy, and requires only skills that you learn while surviving in K-12 schools. It doesn't require specifically game-playing skills. So in some sense, it's far out of the normal realm of games. Now, as I've said, it's very popular. I remember going to a Gen Con. I came in the main door in the morning and saw a dozen or so people playing Werewolf in the lobby, as everybody else streamed past them to go to the exhibition hall and all the other places. When I left that evening, the Werewolf games were still going on, with about half the people from the morning and others who replaced, so that about the same number. Now my reaction was, why would you go to Gen Con to play Werewolf? I don't know, but I see people play a lot of games at conventions and I say, why would you come to a convention to play that? People have all kinds of different motivations. Now, why would you refuse to play a game or type of game that's so popular? Well, I know a gamer who's hosted a monthly game night for donkey's years, who plays most games what I'd call voraciously, who's willing to play most kinds of games, but he will not play social deduction games because he doesn't like guessing games. And I don't either, so I don't play them. If I did play, I'd be, quote, no fun, unquote, because I wouldn't get into fruitless arguments, and I don't generally use yomi. I'm more of a game theory type. I do have to say, though, that Resistance looks much more interesting than Werewolf does, much more sophisticated. Now there's a related category, or related in my mind anyway, and that's games like Cards Against Humanity, which itself derives from Apples to Apples. In Cards Against Humanity, one player chooses a question card. Others anonymously offer answers by playing answer cards from their hand face down. They're mixed up, all are revealed anonymously, and the questioner chooses the best answer. Theoretically, the person who provided that answer then scores a point and the most points wins, but in fact it's an extended joke rather than an argument, which is exacerbated by the edgy title. It's even more a party game than social deduction is, and it has spun off a great many games of odd sorts, party games all. How do social deduction games compare with hobby games? Well, hobby games generally require game-like plays. In the case of tabletop games, like moving a piece, or buying or selling an asset, or trading something to another player, or even making a set or playing a card. The kinds of things you typically do in tabletop board and card games. And we're not even considering video games at this point. Social deduction requires none of this. So is there anything like this in video games? Well, not really, I think, except as video adaptations of the tabletop games. Now keep in mind, video began as single player, and social deduction games require many players. So I'd not expect there to be an analog of the tabletop social deduction games in video games. I can't think of one, but there's an enormous variety of video games, and a brief search online reveals at least one Werewolf Online app. So, I am not a fan of social deduction games because I don't like guessing games, though I see why casual gamers and kids of all ages like them. Thanks for listening.